When I first discovered that band, I really thought they were going to leave a footprint on par with like Led Zeppelin. Maybe not necessarily as popular, but in
Mm.
terms of exploration,
Felt like that.
you had this sense that the creative world was the oyster of this band, and they could do so much. And it's interesting you talked about Flaming Lips and things like that. And then they just settled into this rut basically, and it's like wow, like the even the tones are the same, and it's like you were talking about the lack of A&R. I just wish a band like that would have a producer that would have the nerve to say, you know what, actually, let's let's unplug the fucking guitar,
Yeah.
and I want you guys to go get field recordings, and I want you to build something out of field recordings and try a different instrument completely, like, or I'd like you to score this film.
Mhm.
Like something just to take them out of their established vocabulary, because it's so self-referential at this point. It's really,
I would
really.
I would love for them to have a very strong-willed Michael Beinhorn. Can you imagine Michael Beinhorn producing Tool? Just all the things that Paul adds to my stuff. I'm just like, damn, they really had the guy, the guy within the band
Yeah,
that brought these like splashes of personality and mystery and intrigue and drama to the music that and color that yeah, Beinhorn and Paul producing. It would be
I was gonna say why Paul producing would be
Paul should
interesting
produce.
too. Would be, I
Well,
mean, I just don't understand how that's happened. And I've enjoyed some of their music, but it's like, man, the I've said this on my own video, but I'm not gonna
yeah,
put
yeah,
this on you. Um,
yeah.
you watch that. I don't know if you've seen that drum perspective clip of Danny playing the song Neuma, which is a new song, and this was right before the pandemic. And it's just like his manual dexterity is like so outstanding. You're like, God damn, this guy can do so much.
Mm-hmm.
But that tone, that sort of tabla like Indian percussion tone, he was first doing that in '96.
Mm-hmm.
And Justin's that chorusy kind of bass tone, it's like the exact. And I don't think they would be open to, the band is an institution at this point. It doesn't, from their manager's perspective, they don't need to do anything,
Yeah,
right? They're not
yeah,
in the music industry where they're sort of fighting to keep climbing, where a label could say, hey, we're going to pair you with this producer. What do you think of this? Try something new, where they would feel the need to take this chance and go out on a limb. I don't think a
yeah,
band at this stage would do that. And it's really, really unfortunate, because I think our generation got robbed of what could have been a 10 album incredible body of work. I've always described the magic that band had at the beginning. I have never heard a band ever in any other style of music play where it's like there's this swaying push and pull between all the instruments, and they weren't just hitting on a beat. It was like they would sway on either
mhm.
side of it. I always felt that Danny Carey played ahead of the beat yet dragged the band back at the same time, which is an extraordinary quality. And I remember telling him that, and he acted like I was speaking Greek to him, which was cool. Which I thought
Well,
was cool. I thought that was great, because he didn't even. It's innate. He doesn't even
it's
realize it's.
completely ritual, yeah. And listen to his drumming on. I love his drumming on. Does he play on the Hotel Family Affair on the Lust thing? So
I
great.
don't
It's like,
know.
yeah, I think it's that one, and it's like a master class in like hi hat playing. Um, yeah, it's that song. He's on that one. It's incredible. It was done on. They didn't have like for the Lust album. They didn't have the best drum room and setup, and so it's weird because it doesn't have like that big Tool drum sound. It's a more contained sort of like little new wave drum set. but it's Danny playing, on this sort of new wave song. It's so cool if you're just listening to it from knowing that it's Danny.
It's also something happened right around late 90s, 2000s when recording gear starts to get more affordable. You think people are going to put more music out,
Mm-hmm.
and the other, the
Yeah.
opposite happened.
Yeah, because people are tinkering away longer and longer and longer and obsessing because they can, because they're sitting at home and not paying the money to be in a studio where you have to make decisions and finalize and then move on. So I actually try to, as much as I possibly can, try to impose deadlines on myself as if there were a massive audience and a record company breathing down my neck. Try to behave like that, even though it's an artifice. But it just helps finish things, which I think is like the thing that a lot of artists working at home now find the most difficult to deal with is when is it finished?
Okay, let me just clarify a couple things. So, Jordon wasn't specifically saying in that clip just now that he thought Tool took too long between records. I was talking about that as something that I think did not help their creative trajectory. Because if you go from Opiate to Enema, I felt that at that time they were still very vital, and they were very like the creative life of the band was their primary preoccupation and indeed occupation, right? And then that changed right after that, where they started taking a really long time. Obviously, Maynard started working on other things. Paul D'Amour has described their creative process as excruciating and tedious, and how exacting it is. And Maynard has also talked about that as well. And actually, Danny Carey has talked about that right after Fear Inoculum was released, because there were those comments from Maynard on Joe Rogan, and then Adam Jones stepped in and said, "Hey, I want to make sure you all understand this is not Maynard's fault." And then Danny Carey stepped in to clarify that is how I remember it playing out. He said, Maynard wants to just come in and do it. That's the type of creative person he is. I'm paraphrasing, but he's the type of artist who's very spontaneous, wants to just capture the spirit, do it a couple times. Not that he's careless or half-assed about it, but wants to capture that initial spark. Whereas Adam wants to work on everything for months at a time and get every detail right. And he said, sometimes I want to choke them both out, which I think is great. So I was saying what I was getting at in that clip is that once you start taking 5 years between records, you lose something, you lose momentum, which I think clearly happened to that band. Now, I also want to make clear, Jordon was kind of nodding along. Those were my criticisms, and he was like taking those points and putting them in a broader context and in the context of his own work. I actually love 10,000 Days, and I remember a dear friend of mine who loves Tool, he heard it and thought that must be a hoax because there's like hardly any heavy guitar on it, like past a certain point. When you get into the extended Wings of Marie suite, it's really, really, really mellow. And I loved that. That is exactly the kind of thing that I wish they would do more of. I also remember seeing them at Lollapalooza 97. I saw them at Lollapalooza 93 and then again at Lollapalooza 97. And there was like, it was clearly Danny Carey and maybe one other person in the band. They had like over the PA, they were playing this like weird electronic drum, like it was electronic music, but it was like fucked up and sinister sounding. And I was like, man, I wish they would do a record based on this. I'm not saying that they should abandon what they are. I'm not suggesting that at all. I'm saying that they have other creative aspects of themselves to draw from. And Wings of Marie, slash 10,000 Days is like the perfect example of that. How slow building and serene and calm that is, and how that just kind of swells into something without this heavy-handed approach. You wouldn't listen to that right away and go, "Oh my God, that sounds like trademark Tool." However, what's that song? Jambi, that riff is one of my favorite songs by them. Also, I love the juxtaposition of those two things. I mentioned Neuma. I'm crazy about that song as well, and I also love that. I forgot what that the song right after the Warrior song, the song about touring and being an aging rock star. I love Neuma because it's mournful. It's got like a really, it's like they upped the ante on the emotionalism in the music, but it's still subtle. That's at least the feeling I get. It feels like sad or something so profound and almost tragic, underscoring the way that feels. I also love that keyboard part in the middle, that Moog sounding thing or whatever it is. And I wish they would take more chances like that. But again, when you take 13 years between albums, that kind of stutter stop rhythm is going to halt the growth you could have made as a band over time. Not saying they should have like lived, breathed, and slept Tool the entire time, or not that they shouldn't do other things, but I personally feel that band did not grow on par with its potential. And I can still hear it in moments on these records. And again, I really, really like 10,000 Days a lot. I even love that interlude where I guess the guy is coming down from a DMT trip or something, and he goes to the emergency room. I actually thought that was Justin Chancellor doing the English accent part, but it's not him. It would have been really cool if it was. Who plays the doctor? Man, that interlude moves me. It's the only one of their interludes that moves me. I cannot stand most of their other interludes, and I think it's so sophomoric and annoying. I think Anima is clearly an alt metal or alt era 90s classic record, but it's completely marred by these fucking stupid, like, wastes of time, like jokey things that are just kind of, spat up into the flow of that record, which is otherwise amazing. The one exception is the brownie recipe that sounds like it's like red to make it sound like a Hitler rally. That's pretty fucking genius and funny. That I would have kept in there because it actually has this like cool sort of musical value. But I mean, Message to Harry, Man Back, Negative Ions. Oh my God, it's just like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, and again, that's what I'm saying. Like, a strong producer would be like, why are you defacing the flow of your record like this? Right. So to me, that's where they really started to, I don't want to say decline, but I don't think from that moment onward they had a creative presence in the studio with them that has enough backbone to push back and to try to push them to draw the most out of them, and to kind of counteract some of these decisions. I mean, because there's interludes on the new not new anymore, but on the latest album, Fear Inoculum, and it's like, who thinks this is funny anymore in at this stage of the game? And what I was talking about with the Indian percussion sound, I mean, that sounded really fresh in 1996. Justin Chancellor's bass tone sounded really fresh in 1996. That 46-2 bass lick that is so iconic and awesome. Even thinking about that gives me the chills. I literally have the chills right now thinking about the beginning of that song. But their tones have not evolved. Like that bass tone is the same. Danny Carey's Indian percussion sounding tones, as extraordinary of a player as he is, and as much as I love the song Noima, and those figures that he just, I mean, it's fucking incredible to watch that. I mean, to say nothing of hearing it, but like when you watch him do that, it's like, damn, this guy, his skills have always been like that. I remember seeing them live. I saw them in 1993, 1994, 1997, 2001, and then again in 2018, the year before Fear Inoculum. So there was this like buzz, like, ooh, are they going to play new material? Is there, are you going to see anything new? And I could tell way back then, his drumming is just so, um, what's the word I'm looking for? It's on such a high level, and it's not just the technical aspects. There's something about there's such a distinct touch and an approach to rhythm that's very, it's not just him hitting. Like I said, there's a dimension to his drumming that is, it's hard for me to put into words, but it's there. And aside from the dexterity, the limb independence that he has, the types of parts he comes up with, his fluency with, like, these difficult time signatures, and where he puts accents, right? It's not just time signatures, because like Dream Theater does time signatures. Even Neil Peart, who I love, it wasn't like Danny's more fluid in his placement. It's like what Neil Peart's drum teacher, and I forget his name, but late in his career he studied drums. If you look at the Rush documentary, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about, or if you know Rush or know Neil Peart. And the guy was, he's like an old man at that point, and he said, it's not just hitting it, it's how you sort of approach the hit. Like Danny Carey has that quality in spades, and had it all the way back to the beginning. Even the way that, I mean, just the way that kind of just rolls towards you is incredible. I don't think that comes across very well. I don't think his nuances come across very well in these big places either. I think that's another thing that, like, if you see them now, they sell out these arenas in, like, an hour, right? And it's just this like big giant rumble. It further limits the expression that band is still capable of. Right now, I will say, when I saw them in 2018, they played two of my favorite songs in a row. They played three songs in a row, and two of them were my favorites. It was Jambi, Third Eye, and then something from, was it Intolerance or something from Opiate? I can't remember. But I was like, okay, I don't ever need to see them again. This is exactly what I would have wanted from a Tool show. I was like in seventh heaven. They played Third Eye in its entirety, and I was like, oh my God. So I'm gonna leave it there with them. I still think they have juice. That's what I'm saying, and it's unfortunate that nothing is pushing them to reach, right? Because they announce shows and boom, they do so well. They've basically conquered the music industry, which I think is an incredible other story, with the creative freedom, with always being relevant, right? Being able to take these super long breaks, and like it's like they've somehow cracked the code on a career that any artist would want. And yet I don't think they've gotten as much out of themselves as they could have. That's just my take. And that comes from a deep love for what they are. And again, I love 10,000 Days. There's a few moments on Fear Inoculum I'm like, wow. But mostly I think that record shows a band kind of, there's a couple moments where they're expanding a little bit further or getting a little deeper into what they do, but for the most part, it's like a band going around in circles and circling around its own identity in a way that I think is unfortunate. And had they had to struggle a little bit more, they might still be in a place where they were being, where it was necessary for them to try to get out of their own comfort zone. So that's the point of that video. And yeah, I mean, I don't want anybody to jump on Jordon Zadorozny for the sin of being in the conversation with me. That's a conversation I initiated, and he was just kind of nodding along in certain spots. But he knows them, by the way, in case that wasn't already clear. If you watch the whole video, Paul Damore worked on Jordan's latest Blink of the Star record, and he was around in that scene when all these bands, Tool, Failure, etc., were in their prime. So again, all that criticism is coming from me, and I just happened to be bouncing it off him because the conversation went there, and I feel like I put him in a bit of an uncomfortable spot because it's like, well, he's in a conversation with me, so he's like, yeah, but it's not like he's like, Tool, they suck or whatever. That's not at all where he's coming from. So Tool fans, if you're going to jump on anybody, jump on me, not him.